In the heart of Rome stands one of the city's oldest and most beloved churches, the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore. Rich in history, art, and devotion, it now holds the remains of one of the most beloved popes in modern times. Pope Francis, in a choice that surprised many, requested to be buried not in the traditional St. Peter's Basilica, but here, in the shadow of a sacred icon that meant more to him than most could imagine. Why did Pope Francis make this unconventional decision? What spiritual and personal significance does this basilica hold? And what message does his burial choice send to the Church, the faithful, and the world? Pope Francis's decision to be buried at the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore was not merely a matter of convenience or personal preference. It was a profound statement of his values. From the very beginning of his papacy, Jorge Mario Bergoglio broke with centuries of tradition, not for the sake of rebellion, but to embody the gospel message as he interpreted it, one rooted in humility, compassion, and service to the poor. Unlike his predecessors, Francis chose to reside in the modest Casa Santa Marta, rather than the grand apostolic palace. He declined the lavish papal garments in favor of simple white vestments. He was often seen carrying his own luggage, paying hotel bills personally, and riding in a modest Ford Focus rather than a limousine. These gestures were not performative. They were extensions of a deeply held belief in servant leadership. His wish to be buried in Santa Maria Maggiore, rather than the traditional resting place of popes, St. Peter's Basilica, reflects this same ethos. St. Peter's tombs, adorned with marble and majesty, symbolize the weight and splendor of the Church's hierarchy. But Francis preferred to rest near the beloved icon of the Virgin Mary, Salus Populi Romani, an image he prayed before countless times during his papacy. To many, this final decision summed up everything Pope Francis stood for: a church that walks with the people, that lifts up the poor, and that seeks holiness in the ordinary. His burial site, tucked between the Pauline and Sforza chapels, almost hidden from view, mirrors the simplicity and pastoral heart of a man who never sought the limelight, but whose light shone globally through humble witness. Built in the 5th century, Santa Maria Maggiore is one of the 4 major papal basilicas in Rome and holds a special place in Catholic history. It is the oldest church in the West dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Its artistic beauty and spiritual atmosphere have made it a site of pilgrimage for centuries. The basilica houses several chapels, frescoes, relics, and the renowned Marian icon, Salus Populi Romani, which translates to Protectress of the Roman People. This icon is believed to have miraculous origins and has been at the heart of Roman Catholic Marian devotion for over 1,000 years. Pope Francis, as a Jesuit and Marian devotee, formed a special bond with this sacred image. He would often visit the basilica in silence, especially before and after international trips, to pray before the icon. His relationship with the basilica was personal and prayerful, not ceremonial. Salus Populi Romani is more than just a revered religious icon hanging in a Roman basilica. It is a timeless symbol of comfort, hope, and maternal protection. For centuries, this image of the Virgin Mary holding the Christ child has stood as a spiritual sentinel over the city of Rome. According to tradition, the icon was brought to Rome by Saint Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine, in the 4th century. Over time, it became intimately associated with divine intervention, credited with safeguarding the city through devastating plagues, foreign invasions, and social upheaval. Its title, which translates to Protectress of the Roman People, encapsulates the deep Marian devotion woven into the Catholic fabric of Rome. For Pope Francis, Salus Populi Romani was more than a historic artifact. It was a personal companion in faith. From the first days of his pontificate, Francis made it a point to visit the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore before and after every major papal trip. Each time, he would pause silently in prayer before the icon, often laying a bouquet of flowers at its feet. These visits were never ceremonial obligations. They were moments of intimate connection, moments of grounding and renewal. Francis frequently referred to Mary under this title as a motherly figure who had accompanied him not only during his papacy, but throughout his entire spiritual journey. In times of personal illness, global turmoil, or internal crises within the Church, he turned to her image as a source of comfort and divine guidance. Her presence served as a reminder of God's gentle strength, a guiding light amid darkness. To choose a burial site next to this sacred image was an intensely personal decision. It was not driven by prestige, fame, or the grandeur of papal tradition, but by a desire to rest eternally in the spiritual heart of his vocation. Through this choice, Pope Francis left one final message, that it was his faith, not his fame, that defined his legacy. Though it seems unusual today, Santa Maria Maggiore has historically been the final resting place of several popes. In fact, Pope Francis is the 8th pope to be buried there, joining the company of Popes Sixtus V and Pius V. Over time, the tradition of burying popes outside St. Peter's faded. The Vatican necropolis beneath St. Peter's Basilica became the customary location for papal tombs. By choosing Santa Maria Maggiore, Francis revived a forgotten tradition, perhaps as a symbolic gesture to remind the Church of its roots and wider history. This decision also reinforces his consistent theme, the need to return to the essentials, to what matters most. Chapter 5. A Tomb of Grace and Meaning. Pope Francis's tomb is notably modest. Located in the north aisle of the nave, it rests between the Pauline and Sforza chapels. Carved into the wall is simply the name Franciscus and an enlarged depiction of his silver pectoral cross, the same one he wore every day as Pope. There is no golden sarcophagus, no elaborate epitaph. Instead, the simplicity invites reflection on the man himself. The cross on his tomb, portraying the Good Shepherd, mirrors his lifelong message that leadership is service and that true power lies in compassion. Visitors who stand before the tomb are struck not by opulence, but by peace. The final resting place of a pope sends a powerful message. Francis's burial at Santa Maria Maggiore serves as a theological testament to his papacy. It suggests a Christ-centered, Marian-infused faith, grounded not in institutional might, but in prayerful humility. It calls the Church to recenter itself on spiritual integrity, to prioritize prayer and personal encounter with Christ. It tells the world that leadership, even at the highest level, is best lived in loving devotion and quiet service. Pope Francis's final resting place at the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore is destined to become more than just a tomb. It will serve as a sacred space for contemplation, devotion, and transformation. In an era where many are disillusioned with institutions, his simple burial site stands as a reminder of spiritual authenticity, a quiet echo of his life's work. Unlike the grand ornate tombs in St. Peter's Basilica, his chosen niche in the north aisle between the Pauline and Sforza chapels speaks volumes through its humility. Visitors will not find golden embellishments or towering monuments. Instead, they will encounter a modest stone etched with the name Franciscus, a silver replica of his pectoral cross, and the ever-present gaze of the Salus Populi Romani icon. This humble setting reflects a man who consistently rejected the trappings of status for the sake of solidarity with the poor, the outcast, and the brokenhearted. As the years pass, generations of future pilgrims, young and old, religious and secular, may find themselves drawn to this place not just to mourn, but to learn. The story his tomb tells is one of selflessness and courage. His pastoral decisions, such as encouraging open dialogue within the church, championing care for the environment, advocating for the marginalized, and humanizing the papacy, will remain as chapters in the evolving narrative of Catholic leadership. Moreover, Francis's example may shape how future popes think about power, position, and personal witness. Just as he changed the tone of his papacy, leading with compassion rather than command, he may have also quietly redefined the meaning of legacy, no longer measured solely in decrees or theological documents. His legacy lives in the hearts of those who were seen, heard, and loved because he chose to walk with them. Pope Francis's final act of choosing a resting place at Santa Maria Maggiore is a fitting closure to a life marked by radical humility and deep faith. In his decision, he echoed the teachings he had lived and preached, that the Church must always be close to the people, close to the wounded, and always close to Christ. His burial by the Salus Populi Romani icon is not only symbolic, but deeply intimate. It tells us where his heart truly lay, not in the grandeur of Vatican halls, but in the silent prayers whispered before the Virgin Mary, in the tears of a struggling refugee, in the brokenness of scandal and healing, in the quiet dignity of those the world forgets. Francis redefined the modern papacy. He reminded the world that the Pope is first and foremost a shepherd, not a ruler, a servant, not a sovereign. His legacy is not encased in marble, but in movements of compassion, policies of inclusion, and gestures of profound empathy that have rippled far beyond the walls of the Vatican. And now, as he rests near the image that inspired his mission, Pope Francis leaves behind a legacy not only for Catholics, but for all people of goodwill. A legacy that urges us to build bridges, not walls, to speak hope into despair, and to choose mercy over judgment. In death, as in life, he teaches us that the simplest path is often the holiest, and that the truest authority is born from love.